5 years ago, before anybody was talking about the probability of doom, or PDoom for short, I made a video about what I think the biggest threats from AI were. So today, I'd like to see how that older video holds up and update my approximation for PDoom. I think that the old video holds up pretty well, in my biased opinion. Did I predict the supremacy of Transformers? No. And my bank account also reflects this. But I think I stand by the main points. Humans are jerks. AI's impact is going to be overestimated in the short term, but underestimated in the long term. Hey, you can't go wrong copying Rodney Brooks. And we need to do more work at a societal level to make sure that we're ready for AI. And I predicted that the paperclip maximizing model of AI wasn't realistic. And accordingly, Nick Bostrom's Future of Humanity Institute at Oxford closed up shop. Okay, but what did I get wrong? First, I referenced Don't Fear the Reaper without playing anything of the more cowbell sketch from SNL. I should definitely be banned from YouTube for that.
And the only prescription is more cowbell.
Second, I said that ML sucks at creativity, and I think that's mostly still correct. But things like diffusion models and writing assistants have been far more successful than I would have predicted. However, I quickly followed up that statement by saying that the opportunities for creativity are with a human and computer working together, and I think that holds up pretty well. I also said that we needed policymakers to do something, and I said that in the context of the news ecosystem, where we definitely need additional policy and legislation to combat misinformation. There was also a domain that I totally missed, intellectual property. I think the society is well served by the power of these new tools, and we need a clear policy to make sure we know what data are permissible for use in training these systems and who is responsible when bad actors use the systems to, say, infringe copyright. And it doesn't seem like Congress is up to the challenge. It's going to be courts, unfortunately, who are going to settle the issue, and that isn't a good outcome, but nor did I reference that in the previous video. Everything else I pretty much stand by. But since the video, a new way of talking about the threat to humanity has emerged. There have been a lot of discussions about PDoom from AI doomers online. I didn't come out and give a real estimate in that video, so let's get down to it here. Obviously, PDoom is a probability. So it's between 0 and 1. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a probability. People talking about negative probabilities don't make any sense. Even within this mathematically correct range, you see a bunch of hot takes online. And when you talk about PDoom, we're estimating a probability. I think that's why there's a P there. And like many of the takes online, the people talking about these things don't know a lot about estimating probabilities. So there's a non-zero probability that this video is going to become a primer on probability estimation disguised as a discussion of an au courant topic. As usual, put your complaints about my French pronunciation in the comments. Some people want a point estimate of PDoom. If you really force me to do that, I would give you something around 0.5. And I've seen effective altruists saying that if there's a probability 0.5 of PDoom, and there's an implicit choice between allowing AI research to continue or accepting an authoritarian regime who could control AI, we, for one, should welcome our new Luddite overlords. But point estimates aren't particularly useful. Even if it's centered, half the outcomes are to the right and half the outcomes are to the left, this isn't necessarily a good estimate. Mathematically, this is called the first moment of the distribution, the mean, but it doesn't necessarily characterize the distribution of PDoom well. You could do this as error bars. With error bars, you want the true value of the thing that you're estimating to be inside those bars a good percentage of the time. You sometimes have error bars that encode one standard deviation from the mean, about 2/3 of the probability mass, or more often 95%. In both cases, for my estimate of PDoom, I'd probably say that it should basically include the entire unit interval, which isn't very useful, to be honest. Another related variant is the box and whisker plot, named not because it's shaped like a box, but because it was suggested by George Box. This has the edges of the box defined by the quartiles, but that doesn't make sense here because we don't have real observable outcomes that we could compute a median over. But still, I would probably cover most of the unit interval with the box. But these are all super uninformative I think the best way to convey information about a probability is as a distribution. And I think that p-doom is difficult to compute because it's somewhat misleading to boil down everything into a single random variable. It's really a joint distribution over many things that feed into doom. It's a causal process, if you will. But let's do our best. One convenient distribution over probabilities is a beta distribution, and I think it does a good job of characterizing what the distribution might look like. The probability of p-doom being quite small, I think, is higher than it being a coin flip. On the other hand, I think the probability of p-doom being large is higher than it being a coin flip. So kind of a bimodal distribution at the extremes. However, if you took the expected value of this probability distribution, it would be indeed something around 0.5, maybe a little bit less, because I think we're more in that arena. So why do I think that this is a better way of conveying this probability? I think the biggest reason is that it is better to view this as a conditional distribution of other random variables. If a giant asteroid were headed towards Earth, p-doom would be much higher. But while we know a great deal about the bodies in our solar system, we don't have perfect knowledge. Similarly, p-doom is higher if there were a war between two nuclear powers. And so when most people talk about p-doom, they're mostly talking about AI, but I think that's simplistic. All of these things are correlated, and it's useful to think about this more holistically. And for things that we understand a little bit better, it's easier to see how these are low probability events, but conditioned on them, the probability of doom is near certain. Now, meteor strikes and nuclear war are, thank heavens, low probability events. But conditioned on certain precursors, the probability of doom is near certain. I don't know much about nuclear war or meteors, but I think it's reasonable to be worried about them. So I'm glad that people who are experts about these things are making plans and safeguards to prevent them from happening. And so I think it's also reasonable to have a small number of people thinking about AI safety, not just in the context of protecting people from misinformation or poorly calibrated models, but also thinking about Skynet doomsday scenarios. Even though the Skynet doomsday scenario is far less salient and far less probable as the other problems that are happening right now. Another thing I don't know much about, but am worried about, is climate change. Here, estimating this probability distribution becomes more complicated. Do we bring down emissions? Do we do it soon enough? Does a richer Africa use more energy? Where does that energy come from? There are many uncertain random variables, and there's more uncertainty added to the overall estimate of p-doom based on our poor understanding of the mechanism. And this is, I think, closer to what's going on with AI. All of these things are still true. It depends on other random variables whose distribution we have little knowledge of in the future. Some of these are socio-technical. Can we adapt our information ecosystem to be robust to disinformation? Do we take cybersecurity seriously? Do we maintain our infrastructure? All things that I mentioned in my previous video. All of these things are important in their own right, even if we were living in a post-Butlerian jihad world that had outlawed AI. But we don't live in that world, and AI can make those large risks even riskier because they're not specific to AI. I think that we'll have major and minor catastrophes that are indeed bad, but not tantamount to the doom random variable being true. As a result, we'll build up defenses that prevent both humans and AI doing bad things. Again, as I said in my previous prediction video. But there are also big unknowns about AI. Are the architectures we're currently exploring able to do significantly more than they currently do? Or do we need totally new architectures to get to substantially smarter AIs or GAIs? Can we just scale up the datasets and reward models we currently have to improve knowledge and reasoning? Or will our datasets stagnate? So like with climate change, the inputs are uncertain and the mechanism of their interaction is similarly ill-defined. But at the moment, there isn't a clear argument for why the tools that we have at our disposal would lead to superhuman AI. After all, almost all of our training data is essentially human-generated, and it ain't getting better. So here is my plot of p-doom. Were certain outcomes to happen, it would be much more probable. but there are prerequisites that have not happened. However, AI could contribute to PDoom if we fail to address a fundamental problem of humans being jerks. And I don't think we've taken those steps. Hopefully we will address those issues, in addition to addressing higher probability threats like nuclear war and climate change, to do our best to maximize the utility of technology generally for humanity and minimize PDoom. This is just one video from a course that I'm teaching. If you want to get the whole context, check out the course webpage, linked below. There you can find all of the videos in the right order. YouTube likes to show you older videos out of order, homeworks, exercises, and recommended readings. And if you want to help other people find videos like this, please be sure to like and subscribe to provide a big gradient to the algorithm.